M-Jam from London presents The Puzzle, a short story. Pew came into my room holding something wrapped in a piece of brown paper. "Tress, I've brought you something on which you can exercise your ingenuity." He began with exasperating deliberation to untie the string which bound his parcel. He is one of those individuals who would not cut a knot to save their lives. The process occupied him the better part of a quarter of an hour. Then he held out the contents of the paper. "What do you think of that?" I told him that I thought nothing of it. I was prepared for that confession. I have noticed, Tress, that you generally do think nothing of an article which really deserves the attention of a truly thoughtful mind. Possibly, as you think so little of it, you will be able to solve the puzzle. I took what he held out to me. It was an oblong box, perhaps 7 inches long by 3 inches broad. "Where's the puzzle?" I asked. "If you will examine the lid of the box, you will see." I turned it over and over. It was difficult to see which was the lid. Then I perceived that on one side were printed these words: "Puzzle to open the box." The words were so faintly printed that it was not surprising I had not first noticed them. I observed that box on a tray outside a second-hand furniture shop. It struck my eye. I took it up, I examined it, I inquired of the proprietor of the shop in what the puzzle lay. He replied that that was more than he could tell me. He himself had made several attempts to open the box, and all of them had failed. I purchased it, I took it home. I have tried, and I have failed. I am aware, Tress, of how you pride yourself on your ingenuity, so I cannot doubt that if you try, you will not fail." While Pew was proposing, I examined the box. It was at least well made. It weighed certainly under 2 ounces. I struck it with my knuckles. It sounded hollow. There was no hinge, nothing of any kind to show that it had ever been opened, or, for that matter, that it could be. The more I examined the thing, the more it whetted my curiosity. That it could be opened, and in some ingenious manner, I made no doubt. But how? The box was not a new one. At a rough guess, I should say that it had been a box for a good half-century. There were certain signs of age about it which could not escape a practised eye. Had it remained unopened all that time? When opened, what would be found inside? It sounded hollow, but that meant nothing at all. Who could tell? It was formed of small pieces of inlaid wood. Several woods had been used, some of them strange to me. They were of different colours, and it was pretty obvious they must all have been hardwoods. The pieces were of various shapes: hexagonal, octagonal, triangular, square, oblong, even circular. The process of inlaying them had been beautifully done. So nicely had the parts been joined that the lines of meeting were difficult to discover with the naked eye. They had been joined solid, so to speak. It was an excellent example of marquetry. I had been over-hasty in my deprecation. I owed as much to Pew. "This box of yours is better worth looking at than I first supposed." "Is it to be sold?" "No, it's not to be sold, nor is it to be given away. I have brought it to you for the simple purpose of ascertaining if you have the ingenuity to open it. I will engage to open it in 2 seconds, with a hammer." Well, I dare say I could open it with a hammer. The thing is to open it without. Oh, let me see. I began with the aid of a microscope to examine the box more closely. "I will give you one piece of information, Pew. Unless I am mistaken, the secret lies in one of these little pieces of inlaid wood. You see, you push it, or press it or something, and the whole affair will fly open." "Such was my own conviction. I am not so sure of it now. I have pressed every separate piece of wood, and I have tried to move each piece in every direction. No result has followed. My theory was a hidden spring." Well, there must be a hidden spring of some sort, unless you're to open it by mere exercise of force. I suppose the box is empty. I thought that at first too. Now I'm not so sure, because you see it all depends on the position in which you hold it. Now, hold it in this position like this, close to your ear. Have you a small hammer? Here, tap it softly. Now, don't you notice a sort of reverberation within? Pew was right. There certainly was something within, something which seemed to echo back my tapping, almost as though it were a living thing. I mentioned this to Pew. Well, you don't think there's something alive inside? There can't be. It must be airtight, probably as much airtight as an exhausted receiver. But how can we know that? How can we tell that no minute interstices have been left for the express purpose of ventilation? I continued tapping with a hammer, and I noticed one peculiarity, that it was only when I held the box in a particular position and tapped at a certain spot did the answering tap come from within. I tell you what it is, Pew. What we are hearing is the reverberation of some machinery. You think so? I'm sure of it. Give me the box. Pew put it to his ear, and he tapped. It sounds to me like the echoing tick, tick of some giant beetle, the sort of noise a death watch makes, you know. Trust Pew to find a remarkable example for a simple fact. If the explanation leans towards the supernatural, so much the more satisfactory to Pew. But I knew better. The sound which you hear is merely the throbbing or trembling of a mechanism with which it is intended the box should be opened. The mechanism is placed just where you are tapping it with a hammer, and every tap causes it to jar. It sounds to me like the ticking of a death watch. However, on such subjects, Tress, I know what you are. My dear Pew, give it an extra hard tap, and you will see. He did, and the moment he had done so, he started. I've done it now. What have you done? Broken something, I fancy. No, it seems all right. Yeah, I could have sworn I damaged something because I thought I heard it smash. Give me the box. He gave it to me, and in my turn I listened. I shook it. Pew must have been mistaken. Nothing rattled, there was no sound. The box was as empty as before. I gave it a smart tap with a hammer as Pew had done. Then there was certainly a curious sound. To my ear it sounded like the smashing of glass. I wonder if there is anything fragile inside your precious puzzle, Pew. And if so, we are shivering it by degrees. What is that noise? I lay in bed in that curious condition which is between sleep and waking. When at last I knew I was awake, I asked myself what it was that had woke me, and suddenly I became conscious that something was making itself audible in the silence of the night, and I sat for some seconds listening. Then I sat up in bed. What is that noise? It was like the tick-tick of some large and unusually clear-toned clock. It might have been a clock, if it had not been that the sound was varied every half-dozen ticks or so by a sort of stifled screech, such as might have been uttered by some small creature in an extremity of anguish. I got out of bed. It was ridiculous to think of sleep during the continuation of that uncanny shrieking. I struck a light. The sound seemed to come from the neighbourhood of my dressing-table. So I went to the dressing-table, the lighted match in my hand, and as I did so, my eyes fell on Pew's mysterious box. That same instant there issued from the bowels of the box a more uncomfortable screech than any I had previously heard. It took me so completely by surprise that I let the match fall from my hand to the floor. The room was in darkness, and I stood, I will not say trembling, listening, considering their volume, to the eeriest shrieks I had ever heard. All at once they ceased. Then came the tick, tick, tick again. I struck another match and lit the gas. Pew had left his puzzle box behind him. We had done all we could together to solve the puzzle. He had left it with me to see if I could do it alone. So much had it engrossed my attention that I had even brought it into my bedroom in order that I might, before retiring to rest, make a final attempt. Now, what possessed the thing? As I stood and looked and listened, one thing began to be clear to me, that some sort of machinery had been set in motion inside that box. Now how? Well, that was another matter, but the box had been subjected to so much handling, to so much pressing and hammering, that it was not strange if, after all, Pew or I had unconsciously hit upon the spring which set the whole thing going. Possibly the mechanism had got so rusty that it refused to act at once. It had hung fire, and only after some hours had something or other set the imprisoned motive power free. But what about the screeching? Could there be some living creature concealed in the box? Was I listening to the cries of some small animal in agony? Momentary reflection suggested that the explanation of the one thing was the explanation of the other. Rust! Yes, well, that was the mystery. The same rust which had prevented the mechanism opening at once caused the screeching now. The uncanny sounds were caused by nothing more nor less than the want of a drop or two of oil. Such an explanation would not have satisfied Pew, but it satisfied me. Picking up the box, I placed it to my ear. I wonder how long this little performance is going to continue, and what is going to happen when it is good. I hope Pew hasn't picked up some pleasant little novelty in the way of an infernal machine. This could be some sort of first-rate joke. I don't mind owning that as this reflection crossed my mind, I replaced Pew's puzzle on the dressing-table, for the idea did not commend itself to me at all. The box obviously contained some curious mechanism, and it might be more curious than comfortable. Possibly some agreeable little device in clockwork. A tick-tick-tick suggested clockwork, which had been planned to go a certain time, and then, for all I knew, ignite an explosive, blow up. It would be a charming solution to the puzzle if it were to explode while I stood there in my nightshirt looking on. It's true the box weighed very little. Probably, as I have said, the whole affair would not have turned to the scale of a couple of ounces. But then its very lightness might have been part of the ingenious inventor's little game. There are explosives with which one can work a very satisfactory amount of damage with considerably less than a couple of ounces. While I was hesitating, I own it, whether I had not better immerse Pew's puzzle in a can of water, or throw it out of a window, or call down Bob with a request to at once remove it to his apartment, both the tick-tick-tick and the screeching ceased, and all within the box was still. If it was going to explode, it was now or never. Instinctively I moved in the direction of the door. I waited with a certain sense of anxiety, and I waited in vain. Nothing happened, not even a renewal of the sound. I wish Pew had kept his precious puzzle at home. This sort of thing tries one's nerves. When I thought that I perceived that nothing seemed likely to happen, I returned to the neighbourhood of the table, and I looked at the box askance. I took it up gingerly. Something might go off at any moment, for all I knew. It would be too much of a joke if Pew's precious puzzle exploded in my hand. I shook it doubtfully. Nothing rattled. I held it to my ear. There was not a sound. What had taken place? Had the clockwork run down? Was the machine arranged with such a diabolical ingenuity that a certain interval was required after the clockwork had run down before an explosion would occur? Or had rust caused the mechanism to again hang fire? After making all that commotion, the thing might at least come open. I banged the box viciously against the corner of the table. I felt that I would almost rather have an explosion than nothing occur. One does not care to be disturbed from one's sound slumber in the small hours of a morning for a trifle. I've half a mind to get a hammer and try, as they say in the cookery books, another way. Unfortunately, I'd promised Pew to abstain from using force. I might have shivered the box open with my hammer, and then explained that it had fallen, or got trod upon, or sat upon, or something, and so got shattered, but I was afraid Pew would not believe me. The man is himself such an untruthful man that he is in a chronic state of suspicion about the truthfulness of others. Well, if you're not going to blow up or open up or anything, I shall say good night. I gave the box a final rap with my knuckles and a final shake, replaced it on the table, put out the gas, and returned to bed. I was just sinking again into slumber when that box began again. It was true that Pew had purchased the puzzle, but it was evident that the whole enjoyment of this purchase was designed to be mine. It was useless to think of sleep while this performance was going on. I sat up in bed once more. It strikes me that the puzzle consists in finding out how it is possible to go to sleep with Pew's purchase in your bedroom. This is a far better prescription than the old-fashioned one of cats on tiles. It struck me the noise was distinctly louder than before. This applied both to the tick-tick-tick and the screeching. Possibly, I told myself as I relighted the gas, the explosion is to come off this time. Well, why not? I turned to look at the box. There could be no doubt about it, the noise was louder. And, if I could trust my eyes, the box was moving, giving a series of little jumps. It might have been an optical delusion, but it seemed to me that at each tick the box gave a little bound. During the screeches, which sounded more and more like the cries of an animal in agony, of pain. If it did not tilt itself, first on one end and then on another, I shall never be willing to trust the evidence of my eyes again. And surely the box had increased in size. I could have sworn not only that it had increased, but that it was increasing, even as I stood there looking on. It had grown, and still was growing, both broader and longer, and deeper. Pew, of course, would have attributed it to a supernatural agency. There never was a man with such a nose for a ghost, and I could picture him occupying my position, shivering in his nightshirt as he beheld that miracle taking place before his eyes. The solution, which at once suggested itself to me, and would have never suggested itself to Pew, was that the box was fashioned, as it were, in layers, and the ingenious mechanism it contained was forcing the sides at once both upwards and outwards. I took it to my hand, and I could feel something striking against the bottom of it, like the tap-tap-tapping of a tiny hammer. This is a pretty puzzle of Pew's. For my part, I have not much faith in death watches. Et hoc genus omne. But it certainly is a curious tapping. I wonder what is going to happen next. Apparently, nothing, except a continuation of the mysterious sounds. That the box had increased in size, I had and have no doubt whatever, and I should say that it had increased a good inch in every direction, at least half an inch while I had been looking. But while I stood looking, its growth was suddenly, imperceptibly stayed, and ceased to move, and only the noise continued. I wonder how long it will be before anything worth happening does happen. I suppose something is going to happen. There can't be all this to do for nothing. If it is anything in the infernal machine line, and there is going to be an explosion, I might as well be here to see it. I think I'll have a pipe. I put on my dressing gown and lit my pipe. I sat and stared at the box. I dare say I sat there for quite 20 minutes, when, as before, without any sort of warning, the sound stilled. Its sudden cessation rather startled me. Has the mechanism again hung fire? All this time is the explosion coming off? It did not come off. Nothing came off. Isn't the box even going to open? It did not open. There was simply silence all at once. That was all. I sat there in expectation for some moments longer, but I sat for nothing. I rose. I took the box in my hand. I shook it. This puzzle is a puzzle. I held it first to one ear, then to the other. I gave it several sharp raps with my knuckles. There was not an answering sound, not even the sort of reverberation that Pew and I had noticed at first. It seemed hollower than ever. It was as though the soul of the box was dead. I suppose if I put you down and extinguish the gas and return to bed, in another half-hour or so, just as I'm dropping off to sleep, this performance will be recommenced. Perhaps the third time will be lucky. But I was mistaken. There was no third time. When I returned to bed that time, I returned to sleep. And I was allowed to sleep. There was no continuation of the performance, at least as far as I know. For no sooner was I once more between the sheets than I was seized with an irresistible drowsiness, a drowsiness which so mastered me that I imagine it must have been instantly. I sank into a slumber which lasted till long after day had dawned. Whether or not any more mysterious sounds issued from the bowels of Pugh's puzzle is more than I can tell. If they did not succeed in rousing me. And yet, when at last I did awake, I had a sort of consciousness that my waking had been caused by something strange. What it was I could not surmise. My own impression was that I had been awakened by the touch of a person's hand, but that impression must have been a mistaken one, because, as I could easily see by looking round the room, there was no one in the room to touch me. It was broad daylight, and I looked at my watch. Nearly 11 o'clock. I am a pretty late sleeper as a rule, but I do not usually sleep as late as that. That scoundrel Bob would let me sleep all day without thinking it necessary to call me. I was about to spring out of bed with the intention of ringing the bell so that I might give Bob a piece of my mind for allowing me to sleep so late, when my glance fell on the dressing-table on which the night before I had placed Pugh's puzzle. It had gone. Its absence so took me by surprise that I ran to the table. It had gone. Ah! But it had not gone far. It had gone to pieces. There were the pieces lying where the box had been. The puzzle had solved itself. The box was open. Open with a vengeance, one might say. Like that unfortunate Humpty Dumpty who the chroniclers tell us sat on a wall. Surely all the king's horses and all the king's men never could put Pugh's puzzle together again. The marquetry had resolved itself into its component parts. How those parts had ever been joined was a mystery. They had been laid upon no foundation, as is the case with ordinary inlaid work. The several pieces of wood were not only of different shapes and sizes, but they were as thin as the thinnest veneer. Yet the box had been formed by simply joining them together. The man who made that box must have been possessed of ingenuity worthy of a better cause. I perceived how the puzzle had been worked. The box contained an arrangement of springs, which, on being released, had expanded themselves in different directions, until their mere expansion had rent the box to pieces. There were the springs, lying amid the ruin they had caused. There was something else amid the ruin besides the springs, and this was a small piece of writing paper. I took it up. On the reverse side of it was written in a minute crabbed hand, "A present for you." What was a present for me? I looked, and not for the first time since I had caught sight of Pugh's precious puzzle, I could scarcely believe my eyes. There, poised between two upright wires, the bent ends of which held it aloft in the air, was either a piece of glass or a crystal. The scrap of writing paper had exactly covered it, and I understood what it was when Pugh and I had tapped with a hammer that had caused the answering taps to proceed from within. Our taps caused the wires to oscillate, and in these oscillations the crystal, which they had suspended, had touched the side of the box. I looked again at the piece of paper. A present for you. Well, was this it? The crystal, this was the present? I regarded it intently. It can't be a diamond. Oh, the idea was ridiculous, absurd. No man in his senses would place a diamond inside a twopenny-halfpenny puzzle box. The thing was as big as a walnut. And yet, I am a pretty good judge of precious stones. If it was not an uncut diamond, it was the best imitation I had ever seen. I took it up. I examined it closely, and the more closely I examined it, the more my wonder grew. It is a diamond. And yet the idea was too preposterous for credence. Who would present a diamond as big as a walnut with a trumpery puzzle? Besides, all the diamonds which the world contains of that size are almost as well known as a Koh-i-Noor. If it is a diamond, it's worth... Oh, heaven knows how much it's worth. If it is a diamond. I regarded it through a strong pocket lens, and as I did so I could not restrain an exclamation. The world to a China orange! It is a diamond! The words had scarcely escaped my lips, and there came a tapping at the door. "Come in!" I supposed it was Bob. It was not Bob, it was Pew. Instinctively I put the lens and the crystal behind my back. At sight of me in my nightshirt, Pew began to shake his head. "What hours, Tress? What hours? Why, my dear Tress, I have breakfasted, read the papers and my letters, and come all the way from my house to here. And you not up! Don't I look as though I am up? Ah, Tress, Tress!" He approached the dressing-table. His eyes fell upon the ruins. "What's this?" "That is the solution to the puzzle." Did you solve it fairly, Tress?" "It solved itself. Our handling and tapping and hammering must have freed the springs which the box contained. During the night, while I slept, they caused it to come open." While you slept? Dear me, how strange! And what are these?" He had discovered the two upright wires on which the crystal had been poised. I suppose they're part of the puzzle, aren't they? And was there anything in the box? What's this?" He picked up the scrap of paper. I'd left it on the table. He read what was written on it. "A present for you. What does that mean? Was this in the box, Tress?" "It was." "Well, what does it mean about a present? Was there anything in the box besides?" "Pew, if you will leave the room so I can dress. I'm not in the habit of receiving quite such early calls, or I should have been prepared to receive you. If you will wait in the next room, I shall be with you as soon as I'm dressed. There is a little subject in connection with the box I wish to discuss with you." "Subject in connection with the box? Well, what is it?" "I will tell you, Pew, when I have performed my toilet." "Why can't you tell me now?" "Do you propose, then, that I should stand here shivering in my shirt while you prose at your ease? Thank you, I am obliged, but I decline. Now may I ask you once more, Pew, to wait for me in the adjoining apartment?" He moved towards the door, and when he had taken a couple of steps, he halted. I hope you're not going to play a trick on me." "Trick on you? Ha! After a night with that box, thank you very much." "And is it likely that I would play a trick, as you call it, on my oldest friend?" When he had gone, he vanished, it seemed to me, with a somewhat doubtful visage. I took the crystal to the window, and I drew the blind and let the sunshine fall on it. I examined it again, closely and minutely, with the aid of my pocket lens. It was a diamond. There could be no doubt of it. If with my knowledge of stones I was deceived, then I was deceived as never has a man been deceived before. My heart beat faster as I recognized the fact that I was holding in my hand what was, in all probability, a fortune. And of course Pew knew nothing of it. He didn't know I discovered this. There was no reason why he should, not in the least. The only difficulty was that if I kept my own counsel and sold the stone and utilized the proceeds of my sale, I should have to invent some story to account for my sudden accession to fortune. For Pew knows almost as much of my affairs as I do myself. That's the worst of old friends. When I joined Pew, I found him dancing up and down on the floor like a bear upon hot plates. He scarcely allowed me to put my nose inside the door before attacking me. "Tress, give me what was in that box!" "My dear Pew, what on earth makes you think there was something inside the box?" "I knew there was!" "Indeed? Well, if you know that there was something in the box, perhaps you will tell me what that something was." He eyed me doubtfully, then advancing, laid upon my arm a hand which positively trembled. "Tress, You wouldn't play a trick on an old friend? You're right, Pew. I wouldn't. Though I believe there have been occasions on which you have had doubts upon the subject. And by the way, I believe I am the oldest friend you have. I don't know about that. There's Brasher. Brasher? Who is Brasher? You can't compare my friendship to the friendship of such a man as Brasher. Think of the tastes we have in common, you and I. We're both collectors. Yes, we're both collectors. I make my interests yours, and you make your interests mine. Is that not so, Pew? Tress! What was in the box? I will be frank with you, Pew. If there had been something in the box, would you have been willing to go halves with me in my discovery? Go halves? In your discovery? Give me what is mine, Tress! With pleasure, Pew, if you will tell me what is yours. If you do not give me what was in that box, I shall send for the police. Do. Then I shall be able to hand to them what was in the box, in order that it be restored to its proper owner. Its proper owner? I am its proper owner! Excuse me, but I do not understand how that can be. At least, not until the police have made inquiries. For I should say that the proper owner was the person from whom you purchased the box, or more probably the person from whom he purchased it, and by whom, doubtless, it was sold in ignorance or mistake. Thus, Pew, if you will only send for the police, we shall earn the gratitude of a person to whom we never heard of in our lives. I for discovering the contents of the box, and you for returning them. As I said this, Pew's face was a study. He gasped for breath. He actually took out his handkerchief to wipe his brow. Tress, I don't think you need use a tone like that to me. It isn't friendly. What was in the box? Let us understand each other, Pew. If you don't hand over what was in the box to the police, we go halves on it. Pew began to dance about the floor again. What a fool I was to trust you with the box. I knew I couldn't trust you. I said nothing. I turned and rang the bell. What's that for? That, my dear Pew, is for breakfast. And if you desire it, for the police. You know, although you have breakfasted, I have not. And perhaps while I am breaking my fast, you would like to summon the representatives of law and order. Ah, Bob, at last. Breakfast, please. Is there anything you would like? No, I've breakfasted. Nothing else you want? Bob is at your service. If, for instance, you wish to send him on an errand? No, I want nothing. Bob can go. Bob went. All right, you shall have half. What was it? I shall have half. Yes, you shall. I don't think it necessary that the terms of our little understanding should be expressly embodied in black and white. I fancy under the circumstances I can trust you, Pew, and I believe that I am capable of seeing that in this matter you do not cross me. That was in the box. I held out the crystal between my finger and thumb. What is it? That is what I desire to learn. Let me look at it. You are welcome to look at it, as I hold it. Look at it as long as you like, and as closely. Pew leaned over my hand, and his eyes began to gleam. He is himself not a bad judge of precious stones, Pew. Tress, is it a diamond? That question I have already asked myself. Let me look at it. It will be safe with me. It's mine. I immediately put it behind my back. Pardon me, it belongs to neither of us. Belongs in all probability to the person who sold the puzzle box. Perhaps some weeping widow, or hopeless orphan. Think of it, Pew. Still, because you are my dear old friend, I shall trust this discovery of mine to you, on condition you do not attempt to remove it from my sight, and that you return it to me the moment I require it. You are very hard on me. I made a movement towards my waistcoat pocket. I will return it to you. I handed him the crystal, and with it the lens. My word. Tress. It is. Oh, it is. A diamond, Tress. A Brazil diamond. It's worth a fortune. I'm glad you think so. Glad I think so. But don't you? Can't you see it's a diamond? It appears to be. And under ordinary conditions I would say without hesitation that it was a diamond. It's just when I consider the circumstances of its discovery I'm driven to doubts. How much did you give for that puzzle, Pew? 9pence. The fellow wanted a shilling, but I gave him 9pence. Oh, he seemed content. Does it seem reasonable we should find a diamond, if it is a diamond, that is one of the finest stones I've ever seen or handled, in a 9penny puzzle? It's not as though it got into there by accident, after all. It was put there to be found, apparently by anyone who chanced to solve the puzzle. Witness the writing on the scrap of paper. It's a diamond. I will stake my life that it is a diamond. Well, diamond it may be, but I smell a rat. What do you mean? I strongly suspect that the person who placed that diamond inside the puzzle intended to have a joke at the expense of the person who discovered it. What was to be the nature of the joke? It is more than we can say at present. But I would like to have a bet with you that the man who compounded that puzzle was an ingenious practical joker. And I may be wrong, Pew, we shall see, but until I have proved the contrary, I do not believe that the maddest man that ever lived would throw away a diamond worth, apparently, £1,000. £1,000! It's worth a good deal more than £1,000. That makes the case stronger. I do not believe that the maddest man that ever lived would throw away a diamond worth more than £1,000 with such utter wantonness as seems to have characterized the action of the original owner of the stone which I found in your 9penny puzzle, Pew. There have been eccentric characters in the world before now, very eccentric. But as you say, we shall see. For I fancy I know someone who would be quite willing to have a diamond like this, and who, moreover, would be willing to pay a fair price for its possession. I will take it to him. We shall see what he says. Hand it me back, Pew. My dear Tress, I was only going. Bob came in with the breakfast tray. Pew, you either hand it to me at once, or Bob shall go and summon the representatives of law and order. He handed me the diamond. I sat down to breakfast with a hearty appetite, and Pew stood and scowled at me. Joseph Tress, it is my solemn conviction, and I have no hesitation in saying so in plain English, that you are a thief. My dear Pew, it seems to me that we show every promise of becoming a couple of thieves. Don't bracket me with you. Not at all. You are worse than I. It is you who declined to return the contents of the box to its proper owner. Put it to yourself. You have some common sense, my dear old friend. Do you suppose that a diamond worth more than £1,000 is to be honestly bought for 9pence? He resumed his old trick of dancing about the room. I was a fool ever to let you have the box. I ought to have known better than to have trusted you. Goodness knows you've given me sufficient cause to mistrust you, over and over again. Your character is only too notorious. You have plundered friend and foe alike, As for the rubbish which you call your collection, 9/10 of it I know as a positive fact. You've stolen, out and out. Who stole my Sir Walter Raleigh pipe? Wasn't that a man called Pew? Now look here, Joseph Tress, I am looking. Oh, it is no use talking to you. Not the least. You are dead to all promptings of conscience. May I inquire, Mr. Tress, what it is you propose to do? I propose to do nothing, except summon the representatives of law and order. Failing that, my dear Pew, I had some faint, very vague idea of taking the contents of your 9penny puzzle to a certain firm in Hatton Garden, who are dealers in precious stones, and to learn from them if they are disposed to give anything for it, and if so, what? I shall come with you, with pleasure, on condition you pay the cab. Why do I not pay half? No, you pay the whole fare, or else I will have one cab and you another. It's a 3-shilling cab fare from here to Hatton Garden. If you propose to share my cab, you will be so good as to hand over 3 shillings before we start." He gasped, but he handed over 3 shillings. There are few things I enjoy so much as getting money out of Pew. On the road to Hatton Garden we wrangled nearly all the way, and I own that I feel a certain satisfaction in irritating Pew. He is such an irritable man. You wanted to know what I thought we should get for the diamond. You can't expect to get much for the contents of a 9-penny puzzle, not even the price of a cab fare, Pew. I don't think we ought to let it go for less than £5,000. Seriously, Pew, I doubt whether, when the whole affair is ended, we will get 5,000 pence for it. Or, for the matter of that, 5,000 farthings. Why not? Why not? It's a magnificent stone, magnificent. I will stake my life on it. I tapped my breast with the tips of my fingers. There's a warning voice within my breast that ought to be in yours, Pew, because something tells me, perhaps it is the unusually strong vein of common sense which I possess, that the contents of your 9-penny puzzle will be found to be a magnificent do, an ingenious practical joke, my friend. I don't believe it. But I think he did. At any rate, I had unsettled the foundations of his faith. We entered the Hatton Garden office side by side, in his anxiety not to let me get in before him. Pew actually clung to my arm. The office was divided into 2 parts by a counter which ran from wall to wall, and I advanced to a man who stood on the other side of this counter. "I want to sell you a diamond." "We want to sell a diamond." "I want to sell you a diamond." "Here it is." "What will you give me for this?" Taking the crystal from my waistcoat pocket, I handed it to the man on the other side of the counter. Directly he got it between his fingers, and saw that it was that he had got, I noticed a sudden gleam come into his eyes. This is a rather fine stone." Pew nudged my arm. "I told you so." I paid no attention to Pew. "What would you give me for it?" "Do you mean what will I give you for it, cash down upon the nail?" "Just so. What will you give me for it, cash down upon the nail?" "Well, now—" The man turned the crystal over and over in his fingers. "Well, that's rather a large order. We don't often get a chance of buying such a stone as this across the counter. Well, what do you say to, £10,000? £10,000! It was beyond my wildest imaginings. Pew gasped and lurched against the counter. £10,000! The man on the other side glanced at him, I thought, a little curiously. "If you can give me references or satisfy me in any way as to your bona fide, I am prepared to give you for this diamond an open cheque for £10,000. Or, if you prefer it, the cash instead." I stared. I was not accustomed to see business transacted on quite such lines as these. We'll take it," Pew murmured. I don't think he could do much more than murmur at the moment. I interposed. "My dear sir, you will excuse me saying that you arrive very rapidly at your conclusions. In the first place, how can you make sure that it is a diamond?" "I would be very ill-fitted for my position, sir, if I could not tell a diamond directly I get a sight of it, especially such a stone as this." "But have you no tests you can apply?" "We have tests which we apply in cases in which there is doubt, but in this case no doubt exists whatever. I am as sure that this is a diamond as I am sure that it is air I breathe. However, here is a test." There was a wheel close by the speaker. It was worked by a treadle. It was more like a superior sort of travelling tinker's grindstone than anything else. The man behind the counter put his foot upon the treadle. The wheel began to revolve. He brought the crystal into contact with the swiftly revolving wheel. There was a sh, 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 and in an instant his hand was empty. The crystal had vanished into air. "Good heavens!" I never saw such a look of amazement on a human countenance before. "It's splintered. Diamonds do not splinter on the wheel. Yet it was a diamond, yes, although it had splintered. That was the point of the joke. The man behind the counter had not been wrong. Examination of such dust as could be collected proved the fact beyond a doubt. It was declared by experts that the diamond, at some period of its history, had been subjected to intense and continuing heat. The result had been to make it as brittle as glass. There could be no doubt that its original owner had been an expert too. He knew where he had got it from, and he probably knew what it had endured. He was aware that, from a mercantile point of view, it was worthless. It could never have been cut. So, having a turn for humour of a peculiar kind, he had devoted days and weeks, possibly months, to the construction of that puzzle. He had placed the diamond in it, and he had enjoyed, in anticipation and in his imagination, the greedy visions of the lucky finder. Pew blamed me for the catastrophe. He said, and still says, that had I not in a measure and quite gratuitously insisted on a test, the man behind the counter would have been satisfied with the evidence of his organs of vision, and we should have been richer by £10,000. But I satisfy my conscience with the reflection that what I did was at any rate honest, though at the same time I am perfectly well aware that such a reflection gives neither of us much satisfaction. The puzzle was read by Matthew Jones, and was an M. Jam from London production.